to try and continue in dialogue and keep bringing our awareness to what's going on these days. So, so with that said, Natalie, anything that you want to add as introduction? Or Kibbs or
No, I just want to thank everybody for showing up today. That's usually the first step, and I think a lot of us probably know other people that need to show up, and we can encourage them. And I think this will be a really great exercise, and I hope everyone is really looking forward to just opening up their minds a little bit. Don't just share, but maybe just doing some deep thinking and hopefully enjoy the space together. So thank you.
And we do record all of these sessions, and those recordings are available. We share them through Linfield Ahead. Jaden, we can also share this with you since you don't get the Linfield Ahead, or your friend who goes to school here can. We also have a playlist of all the previous 4 that we can continue sharing with everybody too. Coach Heyer, you want to say anything?
Well, I was just going to add, correct me if I'm wrong, do we not have our CatChats on YouTube? Because people have had access to hearing what we're talking about and what we have to share. But I also want to welcome everyone. This is exciting to have another Friday, a chance for us to visit and chat. And of course, it's a little Friday, which I really enjoy. So welcome.
Yep, awesome. And Coach Kibbs, these are the 5 that generally do this. So.
Just want to say hi, I'm Coach Kibbs. I coach the women's lacrosse team at Linfield. Thank you for being here. This is just, it's a candid discussion and conversation just to have to promote awareness and education for everyone. So, yeah, every Friday was my favorite day, now even more so because of our CatChat. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Thanks.
Nice. All right, and Coach John, are you on the call? Not yet, he's coming. Dr. Davis, you want to say anything?
The reason I invited Stephanie, as well as why I make time for these in my schedule, is because I think it's important for us to have difficult conversations. I think that part of what we're missing is the ability to engage with one another. Matter of fact, I just finished doing some editing on a letter that is going to go out in the North Star and Linfield Ahead Monday, and I encourage you to look for that. And one of the things that is highlighted in that is the need to live up to Linfield's mission. And in Linfield's mission statement, it says it engages in thoughtful dialogue and out of respect for one another. And so I think that the more that we can talk with one another and be respectful, not just scream at each other or just accuse each other of anything, but engage in thoughtful dialogue. Doesn't mean we're going to agree, but it offers us the opportunity to live out the mission of Linfield. And so I'm excited about these events, which is why whenever possible, I put them on my calendar and do my best to be here and be present for them.
Thank you. And Stephanie, do you want to share a little bit more about your background and your experience, or what brings you to the conversation today?
Yeah, so I went to school at Mac High. I'm a senior at Linfield right now. I wanted to join this conversation because I've been involving myself in the protests in McMinnville. I've been kind of organizing it and having other people come as well. I've been pretty involved in it, and I've actually gotten a lot of support and a lot of hate, unfortunately. So I kind of just wanted to add in on the discussion. I was watching last week's talk about Black Lives Matter too. It's really important to me, and I think it's great to have that conversation with faculty as well as other students. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to share our PowerPoint, which is really just meant as no, actually, I'm going to go straight to our video. So hold on, let's see. So the first thing we wanted to do is just talk a little bit about, well, can't do show of hands, but maybe you can give a thumbs up. How many people on the call are doing the Ally to Action 21-day challenge? Anyone? Have you heard of it? Has anyone heard of it? Okay. Well, the reason why I bring it up is we're referencing it a lot in our PowerPoint today. So leading off their example, they have a 21-day challenge. You can still sign up for it through Sunday, and basically it gives us prompts, things to think about, articles to read, videos, and it's a ton of great information. And those pieces of information they give usually lead to other rabbit holes too, to just continue learning and educating ourselves. So we're going to start with a short video that came on, I think, the second or third day of this is day 6, so we're in 6. So we'll watch this short video just on race as a social construct, just to get our conversation going first. So let me get to this. All right.
You may think we know exactly what race you are, but how would you prove it if someone disagreed with you? The fact is, even though race drives a lot of social and political outcomes, race isn't real. One of the first people to attempt to categorize humans according to race was a German scientist around 1776. He came up with 5 different groups according to physical appearance and geographic origin of their ancestors. Americans of European descent eagerly bought into this type of thinking around the same time. Some historians have said the idea that there were different races helped them resolve the contradiction between a natural right to freedom and the fact of slavery. If whites were their own distinct category, then they could feel a lot better about denying freedom to people who they labeled black and decided were fundamentally different. But as political priorities change, definitions of race in America adjust right along with them. For example, if you are of Mexican birth or ancestry in the United States in 1999, you were considered white. Then the 1930 census changed that to non-white to limit immigration. Later, when the U.S. needed to increase its labor force during World War II, these people were switched back to white. And what it took to be black once varied so wildly throughout the country, from 1/4 to 1/16 to the infamous 1 drop of African ancestry, that people could actually change races just by crossing state lines. Then suddenly in 2000, the government decided that Americans could be more than one race and added a multiracial category to the census. This has left many Americans scratching their heads when it comes to selecting who they are. As many as 6.2% of census respondents selected some other race in a 2010 survey. The idea that someone might look one way and identify another way, or that they might be really hard to place in a racial category, is not new. This is why there was a public debate about whether MSNBC's Karen Finney could say she was black, or how we can't even agree on the racial label assigned to the President of the United States. Of course, many people feel their racial identity is very clear and very permanent, but the fact that some people have changed theirs and that no one can really argue with them shows how shaky the very idea of race is. This is all because there isn't a race chromosome in our DNA that people can point to. It simply doesn't exist. When the medical community links race to health outcomes, it's really just using race as a substitute for other factors, such as where your ancestors came from, or the experiences of people who may have been put in the same racial group as you. Dorothy Roberts explains that sickle cell anemia is a prime example of this. The disease is linked to areas with high rates of malaria, which includes some parts of Europe and Asia in addition to Africa. It's not actually about race at all. This, of course, does not mean that the concept of race isn't hugely important in our lives. The racial categories to which we're assigned can determine real-life experiences, they can drive political outcomes, and they can even make the difference between life and death. But understanding that racial categories are made up can give us an important perspective on where racism came from in the first place.
Okay. Let me go back to our slideshow.
Jane, I think there were a few people in the waiting room.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll get them.
thank
Cool.
you.
So race is a social construct. So here's the first question. So we'll take a minute to write about this, and after having watched that video, how do you feel about what you just saw? So what are the immediate reactions to that? So let's take a minute to just write that down. Could be one word answers just right off the cuff. All right. Should we wrap up? So what are your thoughts on that? And I say this, I don't mean to lead the conversation. I'm not leading it. I'm just I'm just going to read the prompts, but the conversation is as wide open as we want to go. So does anyone want to share what they wrote down or how they felt about that construct?
I guess for me, I think that I've had to try to figure out exactly what box I fit into or what box to check. And I think it's kind of categorized me into putting me in a certain box that I identify with when I feel like race is more of my identity. And I kind of struggle with it being a construct used by the government to divide us. I feel like it's just made me who I am and what I identify with. And so I don't really like having to fit into a certain category and having to check a box and decide where exactly I fit when I feel like I fit in a lot of the boxes that I would be checking, like definitely 2 or more races. So yeah, it's an interesting concept to have to form myself into a certain identity or box, if you will. I don't know if other people feel the same way.
Yeah, I could, well, back in the early 80s, when I had to take the SAT or when I applied for summer work, and we had to check a box, but there wasn't a box that was appropriate for me. There was white, there was Native Hawaiian, but there wasn't no other Polynesian, because my mom's Samoan. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about where I fit. I'm not just white. I'm not just going to check the white box but I had nothing else to fill out. It was confusing. And it was kind of like, why do they need to know this anyway? And I guess I took too much time on that part of the SAT. I didn't score very high in the SAT. So anyway, it was confusing, very confusing.
And I think depending on what box you choose, it can divide you based on like the employer. If they want you to be something and you're not, then they already have that information that you might not want to give out.
No, exactly. It's kind of like, well, if I check this, is this going to count against me? Is this going to hurt me?
Yeah.
Is this, it's so, I guess that's more clarification on the confusing part.
Agreed.
I like to challenge myself to think of, like, I've learned a lot recently, the past couple of years, about decolonization, and it's all about like kind of disrupting what we believe and what we know. And I think when Stephanie, when you said like what box to fit in, it's like, well, why do we even have boxes? Like, what would life look like if we didn't have these boxes, if we didn't have these categories, and you just had our families and our communities, and we didn't define ourselves by our race or our color or our ethnicity, but maybe just by who our family is and who our community is. And it's really, I think it's super interesting, and it's so hard. The hardest thing about decolonization is unlearning everything we've been taught, because it's just so embedded into all of our lives. And I wonder, like, what if we didn't have race? Like, in my mind, just like, it's one of those, like, can keep you awake at night thinking, like, well, what if we didn't even have these things? Like, and what purpose do they serve but to divide us? And I do very much believe in history and knowing where you came from, but I don't know if that necessarily needs to be tied to race. And I, like, for Native Americans, we often talk about sovereignty, which is like the ability to be able to govern ourselves and, like, say, how we want to do punishment, if we want to have a court system or things like that. And so I think it's really interesting when we start thinking about, like, how do we unlearn everything that society has taught us.
So if I can build on that a little bit, Natalie, I've been arguing this for a long time, and it's amazing because the resistance that I get when I bring up this conversation from both people who we've come to categorize as white and people who we've categorized as black. And because I ask people to define what does it mean to be black, and considering, in the countries that I've been in, there are people who are darker than I that are considered white. As a matter of fact, according to the U.S. Census, if you're from Egypt, Nigeria, Tunisia, Morocco, you're actually considered white. And then I've seen people be miscategorized. As I've often mentioned, I got on a plane one time in Dulles as a black person and arrived in Rio de Janeiro as a white person based upon social economic status and positioning and how they saw the issue. And when I went to get married, this was one of the most ridiculous conversations in Virginia. I had to check a block as to what race I was, and I put human. And the person told me that was unacceptable, that I had to be one or the other. And so I find this a very good time to have this conversation because we're beginning to get comfortable within the U.S. I find it interesting. We are much more comfortable talking about pronouns now and linguistic constructs around they or he and she, but we're still very binary in this country when it comes to the issue of race. I'm waiting for them to introduce the box that is in Canada where you can put Canadian. I am a proud American. My family and our history built this country. I have more entitlement to be called an American than somebody who might even occupy the highest office of the land and their family's only been here for 2 generations. My family has been here for over 400 years. And so it's an interesting construct and definition, and then what goes along with it, because it doesn't take but a step to go from racial identity to the ideal of racial superiority, So I think that this is an important concept for people to talk about. But I want to be clear, the resistance to this that I've encountered from so many people around this is amazing. It's amazing to me.
Can I chime in too next? I have a different, I was thinking about how some of my friends really like to identify as Asian American, or they like to add the different, where their background is. And so I was thinking, for me, what would I even say? I always just pick white and Caucasian because I can't think of when I say Irish American, because that's my main heritage. But then I was thinking about it. A lot of, I would say, white people don't even know where they're from in Europe. So when I did the census for my roommates, they didn't even know what their background was. And they're all white. I was like, do you think you're from Germany, or do you think you, they had no idea. So I don't know how I tie this in, but when you check boxes, I agree. We don't need to check boxes because anyway, what you guys were saying. But I mean, if you were to have all the different ones, you'd have to have so many combinations. And I still don't even think most white people would know what to put. I think I would put Irish American, but I don't know. My roommates still don't know where they're from. So I just thought that's an interesting ad from more of a white. It's not good. No one celebrates the European heritage we have. But I don't know if we should. I don't know. So that's a comment. I'm not sure if anyone else can comment on that.
Yeah, Molly, I'll build off of what you're saying too. And I think, no, thank you. sorry, I'm at the gas station. I think that as, you know, being a white female and growing up in the way I did, I almost feel like I grew up, you know, there are things that are just not talked about at all. And then, you know, and looking back at my education as, you know, in middle school and elementary school, and like, what are the main emphasis, you know, what is being taught. And, you know, when we're going, whether or not the country can be changed in terms of like racial identity, it's like, you know, where does that even start as well to make that change, which I think has to come from, you know, the roots of like where our influence is also being taught.
Yeah, I will share that I think as a white female, I feel uncomfortable with using the term white culture because it's so broad and nondescript that it includes extremist white culture, which I don't want to be associated with. But I think part of that, this is part of the carryover of race as a construct from so many centuries ago, where whites were put themselves in a position of dominance, that now we've got white culture is a really amorphous thing. You can't even define it because whites have never had to define it. They've never had to say, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. And this because the whole society, all the systems have catered towards white being the dominant culture, and therefore everything else has been othered. You're other than this culture. And so I think with a real deficit for white Americans now trying to understand race and get involved in owning their own biases and owning their own values is that we don't have a definition of white ethnic culture, and what does that look like, and how do we own it for ourselves and distinguish it from racist culture, right? So I don't know how many people white people even think of white as an ethnicity, which it is, right? So, and then like what you're saying, Molly, about like all the different places that we came from too, and what Dr. Davis is talking about, his family's been here for 400 years doing the work of being an American, right? And then you got people who came over in the 20th century, a white or lighter complexion that got put into a system that catered to them naturally because of skin color. And you know, doesn't make any sense, but it's hard to unravel. It's really hard to unravel.
No, Molly, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think it kind of leans into the privilege aspect that you don't, as white people, you don't have to know. Like, I feel like you can kind of you're not challenged on that, and like, and it made my heart kind of, it just made me smile, because like for us as Native Americans, we say like there's so many problems with like Native American, Indian, like there's not even a great terminology, but we should be recognized by like our individual tribes, because we all are individual tribes, just like Doug was saying with like Pacific Island. Like there's not this concept of putting everyone in these big categories is it's just really doing more erasing and othering. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I do think it's interesting, because like, and it's funny, you think of holidays like St. Patrick's Day, you know, and like people who are like, you know, they're Irish or Italian and stuff, but like so many people don't really know and don't care to know. And I think it's hard for a lot of people too to like, you know, reckon with the past and things that, you know, may have happened. And I know I'll never forget the video. I can't remember where. It was just one of the viral videos during the protests of the the Black woman who was saying, you know, we don't want revenge. We just want equality. And she was like, you're lucky we don't want revenge. Like, and I agree with her. It's like, we just want everyone to be kind of given an equal opportunity. And So I think that's absolutely a privilege that you can have. And and just, I think the best thing is educating yourself, which is what you're doing. And like, kind of I love that you were like collecting your roommate's info, because it just, it's a really great learning opportunity.
Yeah, and to build off that, I guess you're totally right. It is white privilege, and I guess I'm frustrated because looking back, I still love my roommates. They're like my still favorite people, but they're like, why do we need to know? Like, it doesn't matter. We can be categorized that way. But that's also like the privilege that we don't have to worry about it being identified as white. And so that, I guess, like, I'm getting more frustrated that I'm like looking back at the situation and like wish I could have used that as like for myself. You know what I mean? I don't know if that adds, but it is frustrating. I think people should know where their background is and be proud of it no matter where. And then I also, like, it's like the difference of knowing your identity, but also not having to check the box because that's who you are and that's how you identify, unless you want to, I guess. But yeah, so I guess not how I
Welcome, John.
Hi, guys.
Hi. Good to have you here. We just watched a short video, and then we're kind of taking a look at a couple of questions here. And I don't know if you have anything you want to add on race as a social construct, or yeah, anything along those, anything you want to chime in on.
Okay, so have you guys seen this video, State Trooper Hewitt? It's from Virginia. It's from 2019. It's where this gentleman he's recording, and this he's an African-American gentleman, and this Caucasian officer looks at the camera, and he says, I'm about to put a show on for the world to see. And he says, do you realize I'm a physical specimen? This is what the cop says to the gentleman. And then he puts him in a headlock and pulls him out of the car and says, how do you like that? And I shared the video on my own private page, and people are saying to me, why doesn't this guy comply? And my thing is, you're completely ignoring the fact that the cop says, I'm about to put a show on for the world. I am a specimen. How do you like that? While he has him in the headlock. So I guess the race or as a construct is, am I as a Black person supposed to be inferior all the time? Like, no matter what you do, I'm supposed to be like, yes, sir, no, sir, or it's what did I do wrong? Like, it's kind of like saying, if somebody's like, hey, well, I got raped, would your response be, oh, well, what dress did you wear? Right? Like, to me, that's horrible.
For some people it is. For some people it is. I'm just gonna add that, but good point.
I'm just saying, like, I don't understand. Like, okay, so for example, in this specific case, this gentleman had an expired tag. In the state of Virginia, that is a minor traffic citation that carries a fine of $250. Then this officer said that she smelled weed. Well, according to the Farm Bill of 2018, signed into law by President Trump, that legalized hemp. So are you telling me that in walking past the car, this officer can smell marijuana and conduct an investigation to decide that it is marijuana and it's not hemp, therefore it's an illegal substance, violating the Farm Bill of 2018, violating the Fourth Amendment right of illegal search and seizures because they did not have a warrant to search this young man's car. And yet the Breonna Taylor case is still under investigation for 2 months.
And they're still not arrested. The officers aren't.
That's what I'm saying. Like, where is the, again, there's this idea of like equal versus special. Like, I don't need you to treat me specially, right? Like, don't break the rules for me. Just let me play the game fairly. right? Like we're in sport. I'm in basketball. Like I want 2 points when I make a shot also, right? Like you would feel slighted if you shot the ball behind the 3-point line and you only gave me 1 point for it. But you get 3 points from shooting there. All I'm saying is let's keep the same energy. Like how can you now does that mean that officer is trained in marijuana and hemp recognition, like to the point to where they can smell it and say, oh, that's marijuana or that's hemp? You see what I'm saying? Like that makes no sense, and that is why people are angry. And again, I'm sorry, but I go back to the foundation. So when people say to me, this is a Christian nation, well, people came here to escape religious persecution. So like you're supposed to have religious freedom here. You're supposed to have religious freedom here. That means if you want to pray to God or Buddha or Allah or to this green bottle cap, that's your prerogative. Right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to understand why people cannot see that. Like, is that a choice? Are you choosing to not see? Because I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. I really don't. Could you imagine there was a statue of bin Laden at Ground Zero? Could you imagine that? There's no way. There's no way that would happen.
I have to
I can't hear you, whoever's talking.
It made me think of, so I just kind of concept of seeing, like, you know, others not being can you hear me?
Better
hear
now.
you now.
Yeah, now we can.
Okay, you guys hear me okay? Sorry. So this concept of white supremacy. So my partner is a white male who grew up in south of Atlanta. He had a lot of exposure to black males and females in high school, and I think he considered himself pretty woke, you know. And it's been really fascinating to watch this past year of us just both educating ourselves more, especially around Black Lives Matter. And the other night he got out of the shower and he was like, you know, I was just thinking in the shower, like, this idea of white supremacy, like, it's such BS. Like, it's like, I think of every athlete or every like person I ever played with. He was a pitcher and he was considered, and he still works in sports. And so he's like, you know, I feel like every time an African American or a black person is given a chance, they outperform. And I was like, yes, exactly. Like, it was just like, it was so cool to see that light bulb go off in his head. But it was just like, he was saying, like, oh, white supremacy it's not just saying that like white people are better. It's this inferiority complex, right? Like this idea that like we have to have an advantage. Like, I think it goes back to like slave owner mentality and how, you know, slaves had to be kept, you know, under control because they obviously were very much stronger and, you know, probably healthier, you know, than their white counterparts. But that just made me think of that. And I just think that it's some of these terms, it's every day. It's like we still have to keep thinking about, okay, what do these terms mean, and how does that all play into like our society? But thanks, John, and everyone.
Sorry, Jane, I went off on a tangent. I apologize.
No, I love that, and that's exactly what these conversations are. So I appreciate it. We can look at this other question too. Do you think our country is able to evolve away from the idea of racial identities, black and white, etc.? And you know, can we actually do it? And I will start by saying that when we started this conversation by Stephanie and Doug talking about ticking a box, right, and not knowing which box to tick. And I'm actually in the middle of a required annual NCAA report right now where I have to go through and report on everyone's ethnicity, all the athletes, all the coaches, figure out the percentages. And part of me just wants to be like, no, I don't want to do it.
Is one of those still alien too, Jane? Can we talk about that term?
No, actually, alien is not an option, thankfully.
Okay. That used to be an NCAA term.
Right.
Yeah, so Jane, it's important to understand why this country started collecting that data, and then what we can do to move beyond that if we can.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest impetus underneath collecting data around so-called race, and that's actually how you'll always hear me refer to this term as so-called race, is that there was systemic exclusion of certain people in society. So in order to determine what's called a prima facie, on its face cases of discrimination, that institutions had to start collecting data upon its racial groups to see whether they were in compliance with laws, particularly executive order that came out of the Civil Rights Act of 1968. Which prohibited discrimination based upon so-called race, as well as gender, as well as a number of other things. Just for the record, on a small tangent, it only became recent when I used to ask students this question in a course that I taught, that sexual orientation was not part of federal law. That was a recent addition. But it was, that was included. It was 7 federally protected classes. And so I think that we can, but I'm not sure whether we should at this point, even if I don't believe in race, because the reality of it is that there is still systemic discrimination. So like, for instance, and that often, Jane, in these conversations, I bring it back home to Linfield. And so I will ask the question, and if I didn't have the data, I wouldn't know the answer to this. Are there any Black professors at Linfield? And the answer is no. Then you have to ask yourself why there are no Black professors at Linfield. And the reason that it is in Oregon and Minville is not a satisfactory explanation. We've done a little better with what's referred to here, and I have to transition, but I just came from the East Coast, we call it Hispanic over here, is Latinx population. And I was part, and so in the interest of full disclosure, I was part of a program called the PhD Project, which focused on increasing the number of underrepresented minorities as professors of School of Business. Natalie's aware of this program now also, but they had they had 3 targeted populations: those who are considered Black Americans, those who are considered Hispanic, and those who are considered Native American. So why those 3 populations? Because in academia, Indians are overrepresented, people from the Indian subcontinent, people from the African continent are overrepresented, which is an interesting phenomenon about how that happens. And so I think that we can evolve, but we also need to track. And I think that Linfield, and hopefully I'll have an announcement for you next week. I gave you a preview of an announcement in the last conversation. I can't give you a new announcement until the ink is dry on an announcement that I'll have for you next week, is that we have to intentionally create a level playing field. And I need to be clear that you don't have to be racist to perpetuate a racist system. And so in academia, how that shows up is the word fit, that the person is not the right fit. And so there is an assumption which is based in the notion of racial superiority, even though it would never be construed by that. There are a number of our colleagues on the faculty here who come from Ivy League backgrounds, with the assumption that somehow coming from that background in and of itself is better than not coming from that background. But I'm not sure whether they would hold mustard to somebody who struggled and paid their way and worked 2 or 3 jobs, Stephanie, to get through Howard, Florida A&M, North Carolina A&T. And why are we not recruiting faculty or administrators that are different? So if we're committed to changing the ideal and making racial identity relevant, we have to be committed to systemic change that doesn't inherently block out people who take different paths. And I'll stop there if you want to ask me questions or wrestle with that. But I think that the tracking is relevant because we need to know where people are not, and then ask ourselves the pivotal question as to why are they not there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting as the person doing the tracking, it's for each person to identify how they classify it themselves. So they have to classify themselves. And Stephanie, you've said it's difficult to do that, but I can't look at these teams and say, well, this is what I think the percentage is. It has to come from them. And so, yeah, thank you for saying that. And one of the things too that it reminds me of too, is like your point about, who has the harder road, the person who works 3 jobs and gets this role as a professor versus the one who had, a real smooth pavement and a short walk. And it reminds me of the analogy in sports of marathon. Who's the greater endurance athlete? The person who finishes a marathon in 2 hours or the person who finishes it in 7? Those people have a lot of grit sticking with it and getting that thing done. Just remind me of that. Stephanie, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to reiterate about, in terms of the country removing like racial identities. I don't personally think that would happen here, because I think people are very set on their own racial identity, that being white, black, etc. I actually have a time when I was protesting and I had a sign that said Black Lives Matter. And then someone asked me, why isn't there a White Lives Matter sign? And I had to explain to them why I was doing it, what the point was. And I said, you can make your own White Lives Matter sign, but all lives can't matter until Black lives do. And they just didn't understand that concept. And I think a lot of the people that live here don't understand the Black Lives Matter concept, or even what all lives matter truly means. So until we get to that point, I don't think we're able to get rid of black or white in anytime soon. I would hope so, but until people start listening and understanding, I don't think it will go away. I think people are really, really into their white power and white supremacy in this country. I don't know if other people feel the same way or have noticed that, because I have in this town.
Yeah, I liked how you said the because that's the first thing that came to mind. I was like, America can't, at least not in the present moment, simply because it's a power thing. Really, this racial identities have been and are revolving around power. And I think it's a form of control. And so it's going to be very difficult. You're going to have to eliminate a lot of generations or really do some 360 education, which is also very difficult, at least from my understanding of the American system and how things work with what little I know about the system.
And I've noticed a lot of people have grown up that way, and so they're unwilling to change their mind about it. People just say that's how they were raised, so that's just what they believe. They're unable to think any other way or look at any other perspective. especially with people that are very set in their ways. They're just unable to think in a different way or try to understand someone else's perspective.
I was also just gonna add to that to answer the question about like if we're able to evolve away from the idea of racial identities, is like there's a lot of reductionist kind of conversation from white people that seeks to like erase race by like the phrase all lives matter, or like we're all human, or things like that. And I think those phrases and that understanding or lack of understanding and a lack of reckoning with the role that race has played in the formation of like US society, but also like our involvement overseas. I think that without that like really comprehensive societal wide reckoning about the role that race plays, I don't think any moving away from our understanding of race can happen until some of those wrongs are rectified and people, white people, really get it. And we can't just like throw our hands up and say, okay, like let's move on. I think there needs to be like a really comprehensive reckoning before that can happen.
Yeah, well said. Let's move on, because actually this now comes to, let's go to the next one. So we'll digging, I think part of that reckoning that you're talking about, Jaden, is actually, it's hard to know what you can't see, and it's hard to address what you can't see. And so a lot of times if white people, well, all the time, if white people are not willing to do the work to look and to recognize their own lens, then how can they assist in dismantling racism? So considering this, so let's take a few minutes to just another break for writing. So let's address the first question. When did you first become aware of race? Just jot down what your first recollection of that awareness was. All right, anyone want to share their recollection of first becoming aware of race?
I will start if possible. Okay, so a little bit more about my background. I was adopted at 4 days old, and I was adopted into a white family. The first real recollection that I had was I remember going into the supermarket with my mom. She's white, and people would come up to us and like ask like if I was taken, if my mom had an affair, because I did not look like her in any way. So people always had some way of making it about race when I was just trying to go get groceries or whatever it was with my mom. And then the time that I realized it in school was around 5th grade. I got cast in like the 5th grade play as the part for Snow White. A lot of kids did not like that, and they told me that like Snow White can't be black, Snow White can't be this, that, and this. And I didn't even like really think about it. I just wanted to have that part. And kids made it aware to me that I shouldn't have that part because I'm not pale skinned. And from then on, I just realized that I am different and I'm not the majority race. And it really opened my eyes to those around me and just like a different mindset of wanting to look at people based on their race. So those were the times that I really started to notice it.
Wow. Anyone else want to share their first encounter? I'll share mine if we're quiet. Stephanie, it's mind blowing to hear, you know, at such a young age to be exposed to that, to be told, and from the way that a book was published, that this character it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like the Disney character, the Disney princess that was like ivory skin, and I was not ivory skin.
Ridiculous. Yeah. I grew up in a white, pretty crunchy community in the coastal hills of California. Neil Young lived not far away. Never went to his house, but anyway, we knew he was there. His ranch was there. And I remember my godfather, his partner was Latino, and I remember going over to his house. His business partner, they owned a body shop together, and his partner was there. And now I'm totally blanking on his name, but I remember he was the first brown person that I met, where I was like staring at him like, oh, hi. And my godfather just totally called it out. It was like, is he your first Mexican? It's your first Mexican. Oh my God, it's your first Mexican. Well, yes, this is a Mexican person, and just like went with it. And I was just like, hi. But even at that moment, like at 7, just to not realize up until that point, the school that I had been in, the people that I was around, the community that I'd been around, I just didn't have any awareness that somebody could look different than what I was used to seeing. And that just like was mind blowing. And I love that my godfather just called it out in that moment and was just like, yeah, he's a human being, and he's my business partner, and here's what we do. Like, okay, thank you. But it was eye-opening for me at that moment to just be like, oh, you don't know what you don't know, especially when you're 7.
Well, I could share a little bit. My experience is a little different growing up in Hawaii. Race, my mom was one of 14, and her sisters married people of different colors, different races. I mean, it's just a melting pot. But we've always been around different cultures. White was a minority. But I'll tell you a quick story where it really came to light of my culture and my race. I was probably in the 3rd or 4th grade playing flag football, competitive flag football. I was too heavy to play tackle football. And so it's actually my cousin who came to watch me play that told me the story. Apparently I was having a heyday on defense, getting the flags and making plays. And someone on the sideline, Samoan guy says, he's yelling, get that Haole kid, get that Haole kid, referring to me. Haole means Caucasian, white kid. And so my cousin turns to him and says, well, he's part Samoan too. And the other guy says, oh, that's why he's having a good day. So he said it was okay because I was Samoan. That's why he's playing really well, you know. But growing up in Hawaii, it's just, I've been around mixed races all my life. And it really came to light is when I came to McMinnville, where it was different, when I came to college here. And having a darker skin tone, people always looked at you as what's your nationality. They want to know what's your race. We're going to Hawaii was, well, I have cousins who are African-American, part Samoan, half Filipino, part Samoan, Asian, Samoan, everything Samoan, mix. So I was always around that all the time. And so when we got together, it was our families coming together. And our family was made up of races from all over. And we didn't see race, we saw family. That's my cousin, that's my uncle, that's my aunt. And so that's one thing we always do when we go to an event with our family is the first thing we do as a family is we kiss all of our aunts and shake our uncles' hands. And we welcome all of our family. That's what and they still do it to this day. That's just the environment that I grew up in.
Yeah, I can give a perspective. I went to a Catholic private school my whole life from K through 12. So I was around the same people the entire time. And this is like a weird concept. There was a lot of Indians and Asians that went to school with me, with white. But really in high school was when I had the first like friend that was Black or African American. There was none, or there were no people of that race or background in my middle school or elementary school, so I never really recognized race until then because I was just used to growing up with Indians and Asians until then. But another weird concept, or not weird, but like my parents were a Christian family, and so I was talking to my sister about this. She's married to a Kenyan right now, well, obviously, and then their sons are half, and so we talk a lot about everything going on, and she has a different perspective. Well, Morris does, which is my brother-in-law. And so like my parents are really big on the all lives matter, or humans, like Jesus loves all humans thing. And so I think they raised us an idea of like, don't look at race at all, which is backwards when you want to identify and understand experiences and whatnot. But I think that's just how like my family, my siblings are raised. And that's why like, it's like kind of took it back because like, of course I like, Christian, like I love everyone, like everyone, but like Jesus, is already whitewashed as itself. And so he's actually from the Middle East, so like they just he's Arabic, so like it's just like Jewish, and so it's just interesting to like help my parents establish like yes, Christian, like yes, Jesus is good, amen, like not if no one else believes, that's totally fine, but in our background. And so just like to separate that, like yes, we do love everyone, but they do have different experiences of what's going on. So like that's like my background, and I think that's how I went through elementary school and middle school. And then once I like started to think more for myself in high school, then I started to like establish it more. Not saying I was totally right, like I'm still learning throughout college and now, but that's just like what the background was, I guess.
I can't see everyone because I'm screen sharing. Anyone else want to share? Thank you, Molly. All right. Well, Molly's comment kind of gets at this next question too. Can I identify racism in myself or in my family? And let's again just take a few minutes to just think of some things that we might have seen or witnessed or understand as messaging that we received as we were growing up, just for our own sake. Let's take a second on that. Okay. Any thoughts anyone wants to share? I'll share an experience that I had just a couple of years ago that made me aware that I had bias in a particular way. And I don't know if I've mentioned this in previous Cat Chats or not. I think I've talked with our Fab Five group about it, but my husband and I were fortunate enough to travel for a while. We went to Ghana. My husband had work to do there. And so he had business meetings that he was in the whole time, whereas I got to just wander on my own. which was great. We were in Accra, and it's an amazing city, and there's a lot to do there. There's a lot to see there. And when I first ventured out by myself, I felt such anxiety. And we had been traveling for a while, so it wasn't that it was a new place. I knew I could find my way around. I knew I could, hail a cab if I need to get somewhere. I knew I could figure it out. But I felt anxiety, and once I sat with that and realized where it was coming from, I realized that I felt anxiety about being the only white person around a ton of Black people. And to sit with that and to realize, holy crap, like that is ingrained in me deeply, that in my understanding of the world and the way that I grew up, I came to understand that if I was the only white person around people who didn't look like me, I was in an unsafe situation. So for me to realize that in this moment just a few years ago, and realize that is bias, and to compare that deep-seated emotional, physical response to my immediate environment, and then compare that with the messages I was getting from everything that was currently around me, there was a big disconnect. People were very friendly. They were being very nice. They were totally helpful. They were saying hi. There was nothing in that environment, in that moment, that told me I was in danger. So I knew that what was coming was a deep-seated response that had been conditioned in me from where I grew up. And to recognize that was mind-blowing for me, because first of all, it was like, once I could recognize it as a useless but deep-seated reaction, I could let it go. And then I could say, no, I can enjoy everything that's in front of me. This person's talking to me. This person's showing me where the pool is. I can figure out my way. And I had a really great time once I was able to let go of that, or at least be aware of where that feeling was coming from. But I also had a realization that while I am actually safe here in Accra with all these people around me, totally safe, there's no signal that I'm in danger, that Black people in America have that same feeling, being the only Black person in a room of white people, and there's justification for their fear. And that to me was just like, holy crap. I didn't really know what to do with that. Was mind-blowing to me. So for me to realize that how deeply seated that emotional response was, that I was not safe around Black people, and then to recognize that I am safe, but actually Black people are not safe around a room full of white people, was horrifying to me. Liberating and horrifying. So that's the immediate response that comes to mind for me when I think about deeply entrenched racism and conditioning. Does anyone else want to share their experience with this? Go ahead, Stephanie.
I wanted to see if anyone else wanted to go. Does anyone else want to go? Because I can definitely talk about this. Okay. So most recently I tried to kind of explain my experience with my family. They didn't necessarily agree with me going out to protest and enjoying the Black Lives Matter movement. My mother said, like, are you just gonna spend all the time out there? Are you just gonna be out there all night? And I think I've started to realize, like, any negativity against like Black Lives Matter is just like racist, because it's truly not trying to make Black lives more superior over white lives. It's all about equality. But it just seems like when I talk about it with white people that don't agree, they make it seem like I'm trying to one up them, like it's a competition. And it's truly not, but I'm like struggling to be able to have those conversations with people that just don't understand that aspect of it. And it's really frustrating to try to talk about that with like people that care about me, but they just like choose not to fully listen to it or pick and choose what they want to listen to. And a couple Christmases ago, my grandmother actually said the N-word in public, and no one really did anything about it. So that was like another moment that I was just like, huh, no one really wants to like stand up for Black lives or like say that it's like wrong to say. And I've just kind of had to just go along with it, even though I don't want to, but I don't really know what to do in those situations, especially when I was younger. I just kind of let it happen. But now that I'm old enough to talk about it, my experience is basically disregarded. So yeah. Oh, Esperon said, would you mind sharing how you are dealing with this? How I'm dealing with it now is I've kind of pushed away from my family a bit until they're able to understand exactly what I'm going through or the way that it would potentially make me feel, because I don't think that they realize that it's hurting my feelings. And yeah, I've kind of spent some time away from them to try to recoup and kind of help my mindset a little bit, because it's been really toxic to be around like that type of negativity all the time. And like I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything when I talk to my family about it. Just seems like I'm fighting with a brick wall a lot of the time. They're so set in their ways, and I can't really get past it because they disregard what I'm saying, that is not true, that it happens to white people too. Can't get past it. So
I can't imagine, Stephanie. I'm really sorry that that's your experience.
Thank you.
yeah,
for
I'm
sharing.
realizing it more that I'm an adult. Thank you.
And so how can we walk alongside you right now, because you're a Linfield senior and we want to make sure that you're successful, but then also that you're carrying on your mission to amplify the voices and to center the voice. And you don't have to give us an answer now, but I'm happy to meet with you, and I'm sure everybody on this call is excited we'll do that, so that we can know how to work alongside you, because I think we want to support you in your success here, but also in the work that you're doing. And then as Debbie's asking, how we can be better, how we can be better allies and just take care of our very own, because you are one of ours. And I think for me, that's where the work starts. Is if we can take care of our very own, and then we can then move. It's a family unit. So unless your very own are okay, you can't go beyond that. And so just if there are things you think we can do, share, or, we can meet later, just think about it. Like I personally, let me speak for myself, want to walk alongside you through this journey where you're here and even beyond, and knowing ways that would work for you and that would honor you would be very helpful.
Okay. I'm still trying to figure out different ways to have people support me. I think it's really just like having people that want to listen. I think is something that I'm just not used to, is having people that genuinely care about my experience, acknowledge it, and want to like learn more about what I've gone through. Because like my family doesn't really want to listen to it. So it means more than enough to have people that want to. And I think it's important to talk to other white people about even like what I've talked about or what you've noticed, and finding ways to really appeal to the people that don't want to listen or don't really care. Because I can't keep trying to talk to them, because it's just like talking to a brick wall with them. But like maybe there's something that you can do to be able to help them to understand so that it's not as difficult for me. But what do y'all think?
Yeah, I think we have to. I think listening is such a great start, and we also have to not put the burden on you to tell us what to do. Like, I think that often happens. Like, we want to support you, obviously, but we don't want to cause added stress. And we're, you know, right now you have a room full of people that are here to listen and learn and talk to, like you said, talk to each other. And another thing I just wanted to point out too was that we often see racism as like white, black, like Miles was saying earlier, President Davis, about like the binary, and like it goes so much deeper than that. And like, I know Native Americans who are super racist against other people of color. And I think there's like stereotypes about, you know, Hispanic or Latinx people that, oh, well, they're going to work on a farm or be hardworking and take all the job. Like, just like there's, and even the bad, like the so-called good stereotypes of like Indians are going to be like great at computers, and like just those little nuanced things that like not only affect, you know, the white community, but I think the system has made us want to tear down each other. And me and John have talked about like the oppression Olympics before, and like how we want to battle over, you know, who's had it worse and things like that. And that just continues to tear us down. And I don't know if anyone saw like what was going on with like kind of some anti-Semitism lately around the African-American community and Black community, and like how we have to stop tearing each other down, because it's bad enough as it is. But yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. But I thank you and Jane and everyone, honestly, for just sharing, because this isn't easy. This is, and especially when we have to look in the mirror and look at ourselves and think about like what have I done in the past, or what are thoughts that I've had that were racist, or, you know, just not good. And
Well, Stephanie, I just want to add that I want you to know that, you know, that one, you're amazing and you're doing good work, but also that I'm present, and people in this room too, I believe, would share the same sentiments, just to be present. And that's one thing that I believe I can offer, to walk alongside you. And we don't have to have the answers, but you know, if you ever feel like you just want to process, you just even want to just share and have someone who can receive it, feel free to reach out to me. And the other thing that I'm thinking about, which you and I can talk offline, is we're engaging incoming students in a week series that we're calling Conversations on Social Justice. And just from our description, the week series is about amplifying the Black voice and really centering the voice. And we're focusing on looking at what's coming out of the Black Lives Movement, the accomplishments that are happening, and how we can continue to create a social justice society for all. And and I'll be meeting with some BSU leadership after this call, actually, to talk about their engagement and their process in that. And so you and I can connect later and just to see what are some of the things that we need to make sure that the incoming students are having conversations about, and how we direct those. I have ideas and I have some know-hows, but it's helpful for you who's been on the front lines of this process to really say, these are things that I'm seeing that incoming students should be able to be engaging in, that we should challenge their mindset. Because once you open up a question, then you can actually challenge, but unless you open up a question, you can't. And so thank you, and I'm very excited just for what's happening and what the future holds for all of us, for the nation, and for how the young people like you were stepping up and saying, this is our season, this is our time. Like, hey, we you know, this is the time to bring change. And so thank you for your good work. Thank you for your good work. Thank you for your good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. I am done with
Yeah, Esperance, thank you for saying all of that so eloquently. And Stephanie, let us know how we can support you or stand beside you and continue these conversations. And these cat chats will happen every Friday, and we're going to do them all through fall semester. So we hope to keep that dialogue open and engaging and going all the time. And that's at least one place where we can all come together and talk about this. And yeah. Oh, there was something else I was just going to say on what Esperance said, but now I'm blanking on it. That WIG group is going to be fantastic. Thank you, Esperance, for doing that. All right. Anyone else want to add anything? We had discussion. Hey, guess what? Last slide, discussion.
I would like to say one more thing, if possible.
Yes.
I'm hosting protests twice a week, Wednesday and Saturday at 7:30. They're by the McMinnville Public Library. If you know of anyone that would be interested, please send them my way. I would love to talk to them. For the most part, they're peaceful. It's just we're starting to get counter protesters at this point, so it's making things a lot more difficult. But love to have some support for that as well. I think that would be so. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for organizing those. Yes, we can definitely help get the word out and show up for those too. Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
For those who don't have your email, I have it, but I know some people may not have it. Would you mind sharing it on the chat? Just your email, because then that's a safer way to reach you. I don't want you to put your phone number there.
Yeah, all right, my
and the members are interested in emailing you and so that, even just to learn more about the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I was curious with the students. We haven't seen as many students as we'd like participate recently, and I was wondering if there's anything you thought, like timing wise, do you think we should move the time that we're doing this? Should we move it to the evenings, different day of the week? Any kind of feedback on that?
I didn't know that it was happening. Yeah. I didn't get the Zoom link either. I got it from President Davis, but I think a lot more people would be interested if there was like a Zoom link or something that people were able to join, like with the weekly Linfield newsletter, because I didn't really know about it.
Yeah, we've been.
I didn't see the link.
Oh, okay. I may try and get it out on Mondays and Thursdays, because I usually get it out on Thursdays, but that's only one day ahead. So if you're not paying close attention.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you if you're out of town, which part of it is that we know a lot of students are just off the grid right now. They're just doing their own thing. But I will make sure. Yeah, I'll make sure. That's a good point. I'll make sure that we get it out in other venues too. Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of our students aren't quite used to the Linfield Ahead because it kind of started right before COVID started. So I think a lot of our students aren't used to reading that. And I do know a lot of times when there's too much information, they have a hard time. If it's at the bottom, make sure ours is at the top.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Let's see. I think we had just a couple action items. Now I don't even know. Let's see, where is it? Oh, we had other questions. I don't know how you guys feel about this, though. I think if we want to continue this or just continue an organic conversation, we're talking, we've kind of moved on to, especially, Stephanie, hearing the efforts that you are putting forth and how can we support you in those. I think it's good to continue brainstorming on that. And we had a last slide on this with action items. Can
I chime in real quick, Jane?
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether, because I think some of what we still have that I think is very powerful is, we can then have this into a 2-part series. So next Friday, we can do the second part of it and cover some of this reflections. I think that's powerful. I mean, we have about 7 minutes left, or 8 according to my watch. And then maybe that could be a way that I think the slides there's even the one that you went past, I think that's good reflection for us, and that's just my suggestion. You know, because how that's bad. It's a very key part of how we do this work, and so that's just my proposal. We can have a 2-part series.
Yes, I love it. Thanks, Esperance. Yeah, you're right, because we can take plenty of time on each of these questions, of course. Yeah, let's do that. And then I'll just get to I'll just share the last, these are the last action items, which, you know, Stephanie, you've already done plenty of this, of trying to engage your family in this conversation, which has been difficult. But the Allied Action number is up there if you haven't joined that and you want to join, and just kind of see what the information is that they're giving every day. They're giving 3 or 4 different items each day, which they've been really helpful. And a lot of them, if you've been doing this work for a while or have been reflecting on this sort of thing for a while, you've seen a few of these videos or articles before, but there's new stuff. It's not really, you know, basic stuff. It's moving along. So yeah. Any other thoughts or closing thoughts for this group?
I want to hear more about Stephanie's work, the front lines, like how it's been, because I've been, like, I honk every time I pass by there. I honk. I mean, and even just the organizing part of it. You know,
right.
How is it getting? Because there are days I've driven by and there's like 3. There are days there's been like 10. So just even the organizing piece of it, and your energy, like what keeps you going when you have 1 person and when you have 50 people? Because I know crowds motivate. I just want to hear what you can share about just that journey. And I know there's a lot more I'm going to find out because I'm going to meet with you. But just for now, I think it'll be exciting to just, Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I can kind of talk more about that. So we had our first main protest about a month ago, and we had a really large group. At the library, we set up a bunch of posters on the grass. There were so many posters. I'd never even seen that. Like, it took up the whole grass pretty much. Then we started to get counter protesters spot that we had set up with candles. We had flowers set up there for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, multiple people of color that have died. I found all of the flowers and signs ripped up in the trash underneath the covered area. So that was really heartbreaking to see that. Kind of just like reset up, kept going, just restarted, kept putting flowers, kept putting new posters. I tried to get in contact with the library. They said that the cameras were off, kind of expected. So I just like moved on, started creating a Facebook group. After people started showing up, because I would just stand out there usually like by myself. People started showing up, adding them to like a larger group message. I was starting to do it every day for a long time. I started doing it every day, just out there, just hoping that people would show up. I would get like 5 to 10 people. And then last Friday, I organized that people were going to come, brought Gatorades, brought waters, brought food, and then like no one showed. Like, I was the only one there. So I was really frustrated by being the only one out there. And then I kind of had to think about a different way that I could do it. And so I decided to move to 2 days a week. And now I'm doing Wednesday, Friday, hoping that I'll get a larger group or a larger crowd. And last Wednesday, we had maybe 15 people. It was great. It's better to have some people than none, at least. Some of the people that have like showed up just want to learn more, are interested. I've had people pulled to the side, like saying that they don't know much about the topic. They want me to educate them. I've had people do Nazi signs, white power symbols, asking me what defund the police means. Like, just like grown adults that are just uneducated about the topic, that want to like make it really negative, want to yell at me. I had a whole family like yell at me that like I shouldn't be doing this. They like give me thumbs down and stuff, flip me off. And then I've also gotten like full lines of cars just honking, just super loud, which is like really nice to hear. But it's really just hit or miss of who drives by. I've had people pull over and grab signs. I've had like homeless, there was this homeless man that was wearing like a F Black Lives shirt. He like thought it was funny or something. I've had people that are also homeless that like have guns and want to try to scare me. So I moved down to Linfield. They followed me down there with my group that I was with. It's really just different each day. I don't really know what to expect a lot of the time. I'm going in positive, but at the end of the day, people could make it negative. So it's really just whoever shows up, who wants to counter protest, who wants to like ruin it. But yeah, it was really frustrating to have people like want to rip up signs that people have made and spent time on. It's really frustrating to see that, but I kind of just moved past it. Like the group I was with, we could just go get more posters. We could just get more markers. I started doing chalk on the sidewalk. Obviously it rained, so it was washed away. I think people would honestly just throw buckets of water just to ruin it too. I have like Black Lives Matter signs or yard signs that people have put up, and people like to leave notes about why they don't like it, why it affects them, blah, blah, blah. There's been a lot of negativity in the town about being against Black Lives Matter, and people just wanting to tell me that all lives matter, even though I know that already. We also have a Cash App page so that we can take donations to get more markers, supplies, posters, that kind of thing. I'm hosting a charity event coming up to donate to Black Lives Matter, the larger organization. I'll definitely let you know more about it. It should be like the beginning of August. I'm going to get a band going, and then we're just going to take donations outside. Hopefully people will show up. It'll be socially distanced. People will have masks, that kind of thing. I'm just thinking of more events and planning different types of things that people would want to join or be a part of. Was thinking of doing some type of community conversation about color that maybe people will want to show up to learn more about my experience as well as other people in the community's experience. And yeah, I like just kind of being out there just so that people will see me. But I've gotten a lot of hate. I've had people like say that they're like out to get me because of this. But yeah, it's been good knowing that I'm doing the right thing. I just don't understand how people are against like civil rights. I don't know. It's just kind of confusing. But yeah, that's kind of just what I've been doing.
Stephanie, what's the best way to follow you? Is through your Facebook page, or how can we keep promoting this information and get it out to everybody?
Yeah, I can share the Facebook link if you want to join the page. Okay. Of members and stuff. But yeah.
Do you have an Instagram? Do you have an Instagram or just Facebook?
It's just Facebook right now. I would love to do an Instagram. I just haven't gotten to that point yet. But yeah, that'd be something I'd be interested in for sure.
And if you can share the Facebook page, you can just tell us the Facebook page name. But then also, you said that there's a fundraising site for supplies too. Is that a link?
Yeah, I can share that in the chat.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for listening and wanting to hear about it.
Absolutely.
Stephanie, could I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Stephanie, do you have other Linfield students around that are helping or supporting you, or would you be willing to have other people join the cause and help you a little bit more?
Yeah, I would love to have more people support. It's kind of just been like me standing out there and people from the community just kind of coming up. I've had like middle-aged men all the way to people that are like students my age from different schools. yeah, it's all kinds of people. I know the high school put on a protest as well. But it's mostly younger people that I've been really wanting to help out. But if you know of anyone that would like to be a part of it, please send them my way.
I do.
Very much appreciated.
I have a few guys who are working for me in the summer who are passionate about this cause and would love to be part of this.
Cool. Please send them my email. Love to talk to them. That would be great.
I'm just saying how I'm just reflecting right now how sad I am that I didn't know you're doing this. You know, it's like when I first I always honk, and I've never stopped because I'm either going somewhere or something. But I'm like, you were one of us. I'm like, why did I ever stop? But I'm just, you know, when you begin processing that happens. But yeah, but now we know. So once Maya Angelou said, when you know, you do better. Is it all right?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's just kind of happened really quickly. I've just started creating things because I don't know, I want to make a difference in what's going on right now. I feel like people don't really care right now, so I feel like I should be doing it.
We care. Some of us.
I know.
Yeah,
Some people care, just not everyone, unfortunately.
I know what you mean. Exactly. And I'm glad that I'm so impressed that you are sticking with it. And I'm glad that you are, that you feel grounded in truth, and that's a great motivator to be out there. But I'll speak for myself. I definitely want to support you in this and want to continue this. And I think in our Fab Five group, we've talked about this before, that the conversation has to continue, and that's part of our reason for keeping these cat chats going. We will not drop this because it can't, once it drops, out of sight, out of mind, and that's not okay. And so we need to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, it's been over an hour and a half. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Stephanie, especially for all that you're doing, but for sharing so much with us too. And we've got your email address, and we'll get other people connected with you too. We'll make this recording available. And Stephanie, I'm just going to send you the link so you always have it. Jaden, thank you for joining us too, if you're still there. And continue to share this. Bring another friend next week too, and we'll keep it going.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fab Five.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.